My name is Ilana Fuller, and I am interviewing Heather-Leonard Sullivan. This is part of an oral history project with Ontario County Historical Society and the Wood Library. And today is March 3rd, 2022. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
So we decided that the topic that we were going to talk about was skiing, downhill skiing. Heather, where did you grow up?
So actually I grew up in Connecticut, just south of Hartford, and I didn't ski. So I did gymnastics when I was young, and we were encouraged, since we were doing that many days a week, that we shouldn't go skiing because skiing was perceived to be dangerous. And then of course there's always that one incident, that one person, somebody on the team went for a ski weekend. It might have been at Powder Ridge or one of the Connecticut ones, Mount Sullivan, and she came back with 2 thumbs in casts. Now, having skied now as an adult, I don't know how that happened, but we were told unequivocally that we would not be doing it ever. So I didn't I didn't grow up skiing or ski as a child.
Where did you learn to ski, and when was that?
So in my middle 30s, I moved to London, and the kind of weekend hobby there is horse riding. So I was learning to ride a horse, and I was a couple years into it, and it was getting more and more difficult. So I'd go out on this hacking or go out riding horses on the weekend, and invariably there'd be an incident, like something would spook the horse and he would bolt, and so then, it was always, well, you're learning, but then I was getting thrown off. And so I'd come to work on Monday, so I worked in an office, and I'd tell these stories about this unexpected gallop, and I went off and lost the group I was in, or whatever happened where I was like learning, quote unquote. And a coworker said to me, after I don't know how many of these stories I told, if you're gonna do that, you might as well learn to ski, because it'll be less money, and at least if you are tired of it or want a break, you could just put the skis up against the wall and leave them there, and they don't need to be fed, and they don't need to know you, and it's fine, and you can still have the same sort of feeling. So I bought into what he said, and having traveled on business, I thought, well, I kind of don't want to do this in front of anybody. So he said, go to this particular resort in France, and the food will be amazing, and you'll get on an amazing ski lesson. And I did go, so I went to Val d'Isère on my own, which they thought was quite bizarre when I got there, especially being an American made it even more difficult, I think. But I showed up, I had bought skis in London, never having skied before, and I got there and I showed up for my first lesson there.
How did it go?
It was difficult. So French ski school, I didn't know this beforehand, but French ski school, because they come from the racing tradition, they'll teach adults, but it's not their preference. And they do teach in the same style that they would teach young people. So you're not granted any special treatment. There was a lot of sidestepping. The first lesson I still remember the first lesson. I had to jump. I had to dismount a pommel lift, which is like the button lift that you sit on between your legs. I had to dismount that on the side of the hill. So it was quite a difficult first lesson, actually. But I have to say I fell in love with it the very first time. And I, to a certain extent, regret that I was frightened off of it as a youngster. But I was bought in. The instructor was good, but she also sort of warned me that I would never be any good at it, which was fine. It definitely baited me into wanting to be better at it.
And you're still skiing.
I'm still skiing.
You're still skiing. So how important is it in your life now?
Well, I learned to ski. I went back 20 days the first season, and I sort of learned then that you needed to ski at least 10, if not 20 days a season to keep what you've learned and perhaps add to it. So this idea that you could do a week, you would always end up in the same place. So I went back a couple times the first season, and then in the meantime I had lost my employment. So when I went back the second time, I stayed for 5 weeks, which got me up the learning, and I would say crying curve pretty quickly. So I skied in all sorts of harrowing conditions, whiteout conditions by myself, because didn't have the courage to like go with a group, because people that grow up in Europe, they ski from kids. It's kind of the same way that you do in the US if you're in a ski area. And I didn't feel confident enough to go out with a group of people. But after that 5 weeks, I was quite a bit better. And I joined the race club. I don't know why they took me, but it was on the indoor snow in the UK. So I skied plastic and indoor snow in the UK. And it was really about improving technique rather than skiing gates or anything like that. But in the end, so I became known at the indoor ski place. And they're always looking for instructors. So instructor jobs are difficult to fill. It is a hard job. It's not just skiing around and people following you. Like, that's a great lesson. But it was a way to go to the slope and not be by myself and kind of pass along what I had learned. And also, I really could empathize with people that were coming for a first lesson as an adult. And especially if I hadn't done sports in a long time, so I didn't have any conditioning or fitness. And I could see their pain, and I could really help them get through it. And it's like, okay, we'll be okay. We'll just work on these few things. But it gave me a structure, and it gave me a motivation to go there. And it changed my skiing from the skis had to be right, and the boots had to be right, and the clothes had to be right, and all of those things had to be right to, from teaching skiing, I didn't care what kind of boots I had on. Even if I had matching boots, I didn't care about the skis, I didn't care what clothes I had on. But it kind of let go of all of those preconditions to it being a good day, where a good day became just being on snow. And I think for me, that was the transition to I will do this for the rest of my life because of that experience.
Okay. So the indoor skiing, I have all sorts of questions. I don't know anything about it. Is it cold?
Yes.
Okay. But what are you skiing on?
So they have different technologies. Most of it is the same way that you freeze things in the freezer.
Okay.
So unlike the outdoors where the cold comes from the air and the ground hopefully is frozen, but sometimes not, the heat comes through the ground and it changes the way the snow is made indoors. So indoors, the cold comes from the floor, so there's something called glycol, which is put through these tubes in the floor to freeze.
The way they freeze the slab for an ice rink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the snow indoors is different. So what happens is they produce snow with similar snowmaking technology as they would outdoors. Okay. But because it's indoors, it's brittle and it's ice crystals, and they have to essentially shovel it out. So about once a month, depending on the place, they will shovel all the snow out because it's no longer compacting. It turns into freezer burn, basically, and they shovel it out and start over. And so then the humidity content is higher again, and it will stick again, and it will behave like normal snow. So
how big is a place like this, and how high?
So it's quite tall. I mean, the one that I worked at in Milton Keynes and did the race club at, it was on top of a movie theater. So if you think of the movie theater with the people, and then the slope is on top, and it's a blue run, and it's not the easiest blue run either, and it can be quite icy. There is one in Landgraf in the Netherlands that's 1 kilometer long indoors. So it is long. And then there's also fancy ones, like there's one in Dubai, and I think they have a moguls field. So they become more ornate, and the snowmaking technology is definitely improved indoors. The one great thing is the weather is always the same, so it's always just shy of freezing, but never bitterly cold. They do have to control for the number of people, so the slopes can be very crowded. Like usually people want to get their practice, get their ski legs before they go away, and the humidity from breathing will change the humidity content in the snow. So that technology is quite well developed now. But again, they have to kind of shovel it out. It sort of doesn't change. But it was always exciting. I know in the UK, I don't know if they do it at the New Jersey facility, when they would shovel it out and make the pile outdoors. In the wintertime, they would kind of invite the kids over from whatever the local schools were to come and play on it, because it makes a huge amount of snow.
And what kind of lifts do they use inside?
So it can be as basic as like the tow rope where you hang on, the old-fashioned tow rope. A lot of indoor carpets, so like the rolling carpet, like a conveyor belt. The one I worked at had a pommel lift, so the same that you would get in kind of glacier areas. And then they do have chairlifts like Landgraf and the one in Dubai, and I think the one in New Jersey have a chairlift in them.
Okay. And where do you ski nowadays?
So I met my husband in Vail, and he grew up in the Bristol area. So we were contemplating coming back, and I know he was worried about whether or not I would be okay with the East Coast snow, having been out in the West Coast, which Colorado is known for their champagne powder, and that's powder that basically just, like in the YouTube videos, it wafts around and it's amazing, and you make the snowmen in them and the snow angels and all that. And he's like, are you sure? Are you ready to go to a place that is very much East Coast snow? And having learned to ski in Europe, it didn't bother me that it was going to be icy. And we got to Bristol Mountain last spring, and we did some spring skiing, and of course because of COVID we had to boot up in the parking lot and all of that. So we brought chairs and we brought coffees, and we kind of did the whole parking lot booting, tailgating experience. And there was a lot of other people doing it, it wasn't just us. And I really enjoyed it. It was a community, and I love the hills there. They have all the trails are named after kind of space things, so they have Galaxy and Rocket and Comet and that kind of thing, which I think is really cool. But they're harder runs. They have, they have green terrain, but it's not the easiest green terrain I've ever skied on nor taught on. But they have a lot of good kind of blue and black runs and bumps and jumps and kind of everything you could possibly want. And certainly with the shorter, distances, you're not traversing cat tracks. So like in bigger resort areas, there's a lot of traversing skiways to get from one place to another. And obviously there's not much of that there, which is great. So you ski and then you get on the lift and you can ski again, and you're not spending a lot of time walking. I can recall one time in France when I did kind of out of bounds skiing. We skied down to a bowl and then spent 3 hours walking out. So although it was great skiing, it was a lot of walking out. Whereas the one thing about the little ski areas is that you're not doing that. So we've skied some other ones in New England, but we're definitely finding that it's just challenging enough at Bristol, and it gives you a lot of opportunity. There's race club there, there's women's club, there's Nordic, so we're not missing out on anything that we would have. Actually, there's more on offer than just a destination ski experience that we would have had in Colorado.
Yeah, there's a half pipe there as well, right?
They got rid of the half pipe, but they have the aerials area.
Okay.
So, I mean, they have competition level bumps and jumps and things like that. So if you are that standard, which I am not, I'm trying to learn some jumps. My husband hopefully will teach me a 360. But there's all that there. And there's training there, and there's very high level people there. So even if you wanted to just go and watch, they do have bumpers that are kind of like World Cup level bumpers. And like I said, they do have adult race club, which is welcome to any level. So if you do want to learn racecraft, they have that side of the equation also. Okay. So there's a lot on offer there for a little place.
And the style of skis has changed since you started learning?
No, so I started on parabolic skis.
Okay.
But I have to say, the skis, it's one of those things that I started on very easy skis. So they make it easy. And definitely as people get older, the skis, they can move back to a softer ski. And there's a rocker in the front, which allows the ski to bend a bit easier rather than the full camber ski. But I'm not to the point where I would need that, but we use that for like the deeper snow and the bumps. You definitely want a ski that's a little bit easier. I would say that's one thing that's changed a lot, even from the 10 years that I've been skiing. You know, in the beginning it was like, we'll just get an all-mountain ski. But then as I've gotten better, now I have race skis, and I have twin tips, and I have, you know, powder skis, and all of that kind of thing. So I'm definitely bought into the range of equipment. Although I would say, you know, I've kept skis for a really long time. So as long as you take care of them, unlike maybe some of the older plastic and all of that, they do last. If you don't let them get rusty, you don't kind of sit them in the sun in the summertime, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They do last, yeah.
How important do you think Bristol Mountain is to Ontario County?
It's a place to go that you can, like I said, have access to really good ski education, opportunities to do the breadth of snow sport, and you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to spend $15,000 to find out whether or not you're going to like this or not. Or, you know, in Europe, the skiing is much cheaper, but it's definitely not a cheap sport out west. And I think these little places, in the same way the little dry slope or indoor slope in the UK, it is the access point for people to ski and to get that education at a reasonable price, which is not available out west.
So do you think that it's basically an accessible pastime for the average person?
I do. So it requires some knowledge, and the passes aren't cheap, but certainly there are passes on offer that aren't as expensive, that are more comparable to like a gym membership if you wanted to go to a gym that had like access to training and all sorts of equipment and all that kind of thing. But is it the cheapest thing? No, but like they're trying to make it similar to kind of that gym type experience. As far as the skis are concerned, you know, boots are an investment, and especially they have children's programs where you kind of pay for the first one and then trade them in and trade them in and trade them in as kids grow, so you're not committed to having all different size skis rusting in your garage and that sort of thing. But as an adult, boots are an investment just because they're your feet, right? And if they're uncomfortable, it's not something that you can do. The skis, as I've gotten better, are less important. So if I want to take twin tips and try to run a race course, I can do it as long as you change the technique. It's not as important as you get better at it. And I think that's something that's a bit lost on people. And it's something I was able to liberate from myself from working. Like, it didn't matter after a while.
Okay.
But I think, you know, there's definitely an awareness that the skis can, if they're kept in good condition, they can be used. So like, I swap skis with my mother-in-law, so she doesn't want to buy new skis. My husband doesn't buy new skis, but we swap back and forth because she prefers softer ski, and I take the ones off of her that are less nice, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she doesn't want them to be snappy. And I think if the community is big enough, then you can do that, right? Like, I've bought skis for $100 off an examiner, and because they were too soft for them, but they were fine for me. So it is one of those things that you don't need to face that, like, oh, I need to spend $1,000 on skis. That's not the thing. There is a community aspect to it, and sort of the ski swaps that go on that help people get the equipment that they need.
Yeah, okay. And as far as your lifestyle and winter, I always say you just need a reason to love winter. It sounds like you found a reason to love winter.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the clothes, right? So when you're out skiing, you don't feel, I don't know what it would have been like to ski in wool back in the day with leather boots. I'm sure it wouldn't have been great. But with the technical fabrics and the layering, and like, I don't use boot heaters. A lot of people use boot heaters, and they have heated socks and gloves and all sorts of things. But boot gloves are like a scuba type material, a neoprene material that go over the boot, and I'm fine with those. So I do enjoy the fact that I get to be out, but I don't notice the temperature because of the clothing.
Yeah, I do. I did a little skiing when I was in high school, and I skied in jeans. Okay. So I know that things have really changed.
And that's probably the most hardcore way to do it. So we do every once in a while, you'll see somebody who's probably the silent generation out in jeans, and you're like, and it's because they've been doing that the whole time. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. This was, well, I learned a lot from you, and there's a lot more to skiing than I thought there is, as any sport or activity. And thank you for sharing this.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it.